I finally found a gimbal that actually works with the Sony FX6 and the audio top handle. We'll get to it.
Now, I'm gonna be completely honest. I'm not necessarily a big gimbal guy, at least all of the time. Sometimes they're a little bit cumbersome, they're hard to balance, and sometimes you have to rig up a bunch of accessories just so they feel comfortable when you're actually operating. But Zhiyun just released the Crane 4 gimbal, which is actually a really compact setup. It's reasonably affordable, and I actually think this is a really good place to start if you want to get more stable and more professional looking shots. We'll get there. Now, the Crane 4 is actually pretty easy to understand. When you open up the case, all you're going to get is going to be the plates that you need for your camera, the gimbal itself, a little stand to actually stand it up so you could balance it, and some things that are going to offer some ergonomics to actually make using the gimbal a heck of a lot easier. Now, in terms of making things more comfortable, Zhiyun added 2 accessories that I haven't seen on other gimbals, at least right out of the box. Number 1, they actually added a side handle that you can use that has a swivel on it, so not only can you use the underslung mode, but you could also use it as a side handle as well. Now, normally when you had a gimbal, what would happen is you had to stack your hands on the actual handle itself, which caused a lot of internal rotation, which actually isn't really great for your back or your shoulders. However, with Zhiyun, you could actually take this handle, swing it out to the side, and it offers a little bit of relief in terms of actually stacking your hands on top of each other, which isn't the most healthy for your body. Also, if you are using this as a one-handed gimbal, they actually added this pad on the side here. Now, at first, I wasn't really a believer until I started operating on this thing. However, it's actually strategically placed, so if you are using this, there's extra support so you can operate for a little bit longer without killing your back. Now, something that does make this gimbal beginner friendly is the fact that it lights up when you have the different axes that are going to be balanced. Now, the Crane 4 is a 3-axis gimbal. You're gonna have a pan head, a tilt head, and you're also going to have a rotational head as well. And on previous gimbals, while you were balancing, sometimes you might have messed up your balance and you only found out when one of 2 things happened. 1, the camera would just drop off on you, or 2, the camera started vibrating and shaking and the actual sound is a little bit scary. However, the Zhiyun Crane 4 has different lights on the axis themselves, so it lights up white when you're actually balanced properly, and obviously it's going to go red when you're not. Speaking of lights, there's also a fill light that's going to go on the front of this gimbal as well. There's a little diffusion cover that you could put on the front of this light as well, and it's actually bicolor and it's also really, really bright. Now, for the sake of not getting kicked out in public wherever I was going to go, I decided to get some shots on the Sony FX30 first.
So I decided to go through a couple of different shots that I normally would get if I was using a gimbal for fitness cinematography, and I am going to post them on the screen here as you can see the BTS, but Zhiyun actually made a very, very smooth gimbal. It's easy to operate, and like I mentioned before, the ergonomics on this guy makes it easier to go into underslung mode, and it doesn't hurt my wrist or my back with the pad that's on the other side. Also, another thing that is going to be very great for beginners is the fact that you can switch between the gimbal modes that are going to come in handy for you. So if you want to use things like the VORTEXT mode, which is a creative shot, you can go ahead and do that at the touch of a button. So I decided to get a little bit out of my comfort zone and actually use a gimbal on a professional shoot, where me and Victor were splitting duties in terms of a fashion spec commercial over at a studio local in Toronto. And Victor, being the master of the fashion shoots and getting those types of shots, really put me through the ropes in terms of getting out of my comfort zone and really actually using a gimbal more in my workflow. In fact, we actually didn't shoot anything in handheld, and the Zhiyun Crane 4 performed perfectly. We had the lighting set up, we had all the gimbal moves, we had the type of shots we wanted to get from wides and mediums, tights, and close-ups. We were really able to get some professional stuff and something that worked really well in a final piece that you could check over on his channel. And I got to try my hand as well in terms of getting different compositions. I think that this is something that I'm going to add into my workflow, even from a perspective of usually shooting handheld for fitness projects. Obviously, there's a place where the gimbal is, but this shoot made it matter that much more.
Now, one really cool thing about the Crane 4, especially if you guys are hybrid content creators, you make vertical and you make horizontal content, you could actually take off this camera from the gimbal itself and you could put it on the vertical plate that's on the gimbal. Now, it does take a little bit of rebalancing, which actually doesn't take a lot of time at all. However, in a couple of minutes, you could actually change from a horizontal setup to a vertical setup without having to re-rig your camera entirely. One more thing. Now, the Sony FX6 totally can be balanced on the gimbal. Now, there is a little bit of a caveat because when I'm using my Sennheiser G4 Live, I don't have enough clearance for underslung mode. However, it actually maintains its balance when I'm doing some follow shots, which typically if I'm getting audio, I probably would have done that way anyways. Now, if you do have a different audio solution that can go on the top handle, you could actually try to figure out if it could work on there, but I'm sure if you use something that's lighter and a bit more compact, you could probably get it to work. Oh, also, there's one more thing I forgot to mention. I didn't balance the gimbal myself. Now, Victor, who you've seen on this channel a couple of times, actually is way more of a gimbal person than I am. And honestly, I couldn't figure out the whole FX6 with the top top handle thing, so I just asked him really nicely if he can do it. However, I also decided to ask why the gimbal is so important in his particular workflow. Albeit I do use it as a secondary or a supplement to my own filmmaking, he tends to use it a lot more. In fact, you could actually check out a spec project we both shot over here, and we actually both only shot on gimbals. However, he actually has some more insight on why you might use this tool a little bit more often.
So one of the biggest reasons why I choose a gimbal for my commercial jobs is that one, it gives you a big grand reveal for your videos. Second is that it gives you a really super stable shot for talking heads like these. And third, it keeps your audience engaged. Overall, it's a quick and easy way to really get professional shots.
Overall, I think the Crane 4 is a great place to start if you're getting into more gimbal movements. Now, this actually is pretty decently priced at $669 to just get the gimbal on its own, or if you want to get the combo for $749. Now, there's other gimbals out on the market that might be a little bit cheaper, and there's definitely some that are a lot more expensive. However, if you're looking for a place to start and something that could fit a bigger and heavier setup, not only can you check out, well, this video, you could check out Victor's that I'm going to put in the description, and other creators that have also put on some pretty crazy rigs on this gimbal. That being said, a special shout out to Zhiyun for actually sending this over and actually sponsoring this video as well.